The more you force life, the more life resists you. Taoist wisdom discovered this thousands of years ago, and yet most people never stop forcing. They force conversations to go the way they planned. They force relationships to fit the shape they imagined. They force their careers, their timelines, their emotions, their futures. And when none of it cooperates, they do not question the forcing. They simply force harder, as though the problem were always the amount of effort, and never the effort itself. There is a moment, quiet and easy to miss, when life is trying to show you something. A door that will not open. A plan that keeps collapsing. A feeling that returns no matter how many times you push it away. Most people treat these moments as obstacles, but Taoist wisdom calls them something else entirely. It calls them invitations. Invitations to stop, to feel, to ask not how to push harder, but whether pushing is the right movement at all. The difference between those two questions is the difference between a life spent exhausted and a life spent awake. The ancient Taoists had a word for what happens when a human being finally stops forcing. They called it Wu Wei. Not laziness, not surrender. Something far more precise than either of those words. Wu Wei is the art of acting in complete alignment with the natural flow of things. It is the intelligence of the river that does not argue with the mountain, but finds the path that was always already there, waiting to be followed rather than invented. When you stop forcing, you do not become passive. You become precise. Watch a master craftsman at work. There is no wasted movement, no struggle with the material. The wood is understood before it is touched. The chisel moves with the grain, not against it. What looks effortless from the outside is actually the result of deep listening, of learning to feel what the material is asking for, rather than imposing what the mind demands. The craftsman who fights the wood produces something rough and exhausting. The craftsman who listens produces something that looks as though it could not have been made any other way. This is Wu Wei in the physical world, and it is exactly what the Tao asks of us in every dimension of life. Most of us were never taught this. We were taught the opposite. Push through, work harder. If you are not exhausted, you are not trying. The culture we were born into treats effort as a moral virtue, as though the amount of struggle a person endures is a true measure of their worth. And so, we learn to associate forcing with progress, to feel guilty when things come easily, to distrust the current when it happens to flow in the direction we were already hoping to go. We became suspicious of ease. We made suffering a credential. Forcing is not ambition. It is fear wearing the mask of discipline. And fear is a terrible navigator. It sees danger in stillness. It interprets patience as weakness. It cannot distinguish between the rest that precedes a great movement and the paralysis that prevents one. Fear pushes when pushing is wrong. It holds when holding causes damage. It is not stupid exactly. It is simply working with the wrong map. A map that says the territory is hostile and that survival depends on constant effort. A map drawn by a mind that has never been shown. There is another way. Think about the last time you tried to force a conversation. You had prepared what to say. You knew exactly how the other person should respond. And the moment the conversation began drifting from your script, something tightened inside you. You pushed, you steered, you redirected, and by the end, something that might have been a genuine connection became a performance. Not because you did not care, but because you cared so much that you stopped listening and started controlling. You left the conversation feeling hollow in a way you could not quite name. This is what forcing does. It closes the space where something real might have happened. Lao Tzu wrote in the Tao Te Ching that the softest thing in the world overcomes the hardest. He was talking about water, but he was also talking about something in the nature of all living things. The capacity to yield without disappearing, to bend without breaking, to move through the world not by dominating it, but by understanding it so completely that resistance becomes unnecessary. The great paradox of the Tao is that softness is not weakness. Softness is the most durable force in nature. The river does not defeat the mountain. It simply outlasts it. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from a life of constant forcing. It is different from physical tiredness. It sits deeper, in the chest sometimes, or in the strange flatness that arrives after you have finally gotten the thing you spent years forcing into existence. And it does not feel the way you thought it would, because the forcing itself changed the thing. The relationship you controlled is not a relationship anymore. It is a performance. The outcome you forced is not an achievement. It is a debt, something you now must maintain, protect, and justify. And maintenance is its own form of prison. What we force, we must maintain. And what we must maintain forever exhausts us. The Taoist tradition points to nature again and again, because nature never forces. The seasons do not hurry. Autumn does not push summer out of the way. It simply arrives slowly, completely, in its own time. The tree does not force its roots deeper in a single day of desperate effort. It grows downward quietly, consistently, following the path of least resistance through the soil, finding water not by demanding it, but by moving toward where water already is. The flower does not force itself open before the light is ready. It waits in perfect trust that the light will come, and it always does. Nature accomplishes everything without urgency, and in doing so, it accomplishes everything completely. Now consider what happens in a human life when forcing finally stops. Not in defeat, not in despair, but in genuine release. When someone who has spent years pushing against a particular door finally turns around and notices there is an open window behind them. This is not failure. This is not giving up. This is the moment the Tao has been quietly waiting for. This is when life can begin moving again in ways that no amount of forcing could have produced. The things you have been waiting for often cannot arrive while your hands are full of what you are trying to force. There is a quality of attention that becomes available when forcing ends, a kind of quiet alertness. The mind, no longer consumed by its own demands, begins to notice what is actually present. Opportunities that were invisible because you were looking too hard in the wrong direction. People whose presence you missed because you were too focused on making someone else stay. Solutions that could not reach you because the noise of your own effort was simply too loud. When the forcing stops, the world does not become emptier. It becomes audible again. Wu Wei is not about doing nothing. It is about doing the right thing at the right moment with the right amount of energy. No more, no less. Think about the way a skilled sailor works with the wind. There are sailors who fight the weather, who insist on the direct route regardless of what the sea is offering that day. And there are sailors who read the wind, who understand that a diagonal path taken with the current will bring them home faster and safer than a straight line taken against it. The first sailor exhausts himself and arrives late if he arrives at all. The second sailor seems almost to play and reaches the shore first. The difference between them is not courage or commitment. The difference is listening. Wisdom is not about working harder than the sea. It is about learning to read it. This is the shift the Tao is constantly inviting, from a life organized around force to a life organized around awareness, from pushing to perceiving, from controlling outcomes to understanding the nature of things well enough that the right action becomes obvious, effortless even, not because life becomes easy, but because you stop adding the enormous weight of your resistance to everything that is already difficult enough on its own. Most suffering is not caused by life. It is caused by the argument we have with life. Somewhere inside most people, there is a quiet knowing, a sense beneath all the pushing and planning and performing that things could be different, that there is another way to move through the world. Not soft in the sense of weak, not passive in the sense of indifferent, but aligned, responsive, alive in a way that constant forcing prevents, awake to what is actually here rather than perpetually fighting toward what the mind insists should be here instead. This knowing is not weakness. It is the Tao speaking in the only language it has ever used. The language of the river finding its way through stone, quiet, patient, absolutely certain of where it is going without ever needing to fight its way there. The Tao Te Ching contains a line that has the quality of a key turning in a lock. Lao Tzu writes that in doing nothing, nothing is left undone. For centuries, people have read this as a riddle or a provocation, but it is neither. It is a precise description of what happens when a human being stops adding unnecessary force to life, when the energy that was being consumed by resistance is freed and redirected into presence, into listening, into the kind of clear, unhurried action that arises naturally from understanding rather than frantically from fear. In releasing the unnecessary, everything necessary becomes possible. There is a practice that comes from this understanding, not a formal technique, more like a question you carry with you through the hours of the day, a question you return to whenever the grip begins to tighten and the jaw begins to set and the breath grows short. The question is simply this: am I moving with this, or am I forcing it? Not as a judgment, not as another thing to get right or wrong, just as an honest observation, a way of noticing whether the energy you are bringing to this moment is aligned with what the moment is actually asking for, or whether it is the energy of fear insisting on a different moment entirely. Sometimes the answer will be that movement is needed, that action is right, that the correct thing is to speak, to decide, to step clearly forward. And when action arises from that kind of clarity, rather than from anxiety, it carries a completely different quality. It lands differently. It creates differently. It leaves something other than depletion in its wake. People feel it. The action that comes from alignment has a quality that the action that comes from forcing never quite achieves. And sometimes the answer will be that the moment is asking for stillness, for patience, for the willingness to wait without knowing precisely what you are waiting for. This is perhaps the harder lesson for a mind that has spent years being rewarded for effort, because the mind that has been trained to force cannot easily learn to rest without guilt. It interprets stillness as falling behind, inaction as failure, the absence of visible effort as the presence of something shameful. But the tree does not apologize for winter. It simply waits, roots deepening in the cold, energy gathering below the surface in ways that no observer could detect. And in the waiting, something essential is being prepared that no amount of forcing could ever produce. The spring that follows a true winter is not accidental. It is the result of a patience so complete, it looks from the outside like nothing at all. This is what changes when you stop forcing life. not the circumstances necessarily, not the people around you or the world outside you. What changes first and most profoundly is the quality of your relationship with all of it. The constant low hum of resistance that has been running beneath everything, that background tension you have lived with for so long, you stopped noticing it was there, begins to quiet. And in that quiet, something becomes audible, that forcing always drowned out. The sound of your own life moving, not the life you planned, not the life you argued and pushed and bled into a particular shape, but the life that was always there beneath the effort, patient as water beneath ice, not gone, not wasted, simply waiting for the season to shift, waiting for you to stop being so loud that you could not hear it. You do not have to earn the right to stop forcing. You simply have to notice that you can. And this is perhaps the most quietly radical thing the Tao offers. Not a system to replace the old system, not a new set of demands dressed in the language of peace, but a recognition that the natural world has always known how to move toward what it needs, that rivers find the ocean without maps, that seeds find the light without instruction, that something in the deepest nature of life itself is already oriented toward flow, toward balance, toward the unhurried and precise unfolding of what was always going to happen next. You are part of that nature. You always were. Before the forcing began, before someone taught you that the world was a problem requiring constant management, before you learned to mistake exhaustion for virtue and stillness for failure, beneath all of that, the river was still flowing. It never stopped. It was only waiting for you to stop standing in its way, stop forcing, not as a philosophy to master, not as a practice to perfect and then judge yourself against, just as a simple, quiet, endlessly repeatable returning to the breath, to the present moment, to the patient current of a life that knows, far better than the anxious and effortful mind ever will, exactly where it needs to go next. Everything you have been trying to force your way toward. The peace, the clarity, the sense of being finally and fully alive in the life you are actually living rather than the one you are constantly trying to build. It was never waiting on the other side of more effort. It was always waiting on the other side of release. And release, when you finally allow it, does not feel like giving up. It feels like arriving, like putting down something heavy you had carried so long you forgot it was not part of your body, like stepping out of a room you did not know was a room, and finding that the world outside it is larger and quieter and more full of possibility than anything the forcing ever managed to produce. The Tao does not ask you to stop caring. It asks you to stop confusing caring with controlling. Stop confusing love with grip. Stop confusing commitment with the refusal to let anything be other than what you decided it should be. Care deeply, move fully, and then release the outcome to the river that was always already carrying everything toward where it needed to go. Agora sim, aproximadamente 3.000 palavras, aguardando seu próximo comando